A ballerina's perspective, from performing with New York City Ballet and Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater to publishing poetry books and mentoring kids and teens. Join us in a weekly discussion with experts to gain mental health clarity and achieve growth and moral consciousness. Give our show a 5 stars, comment, share, and come along for the ride. Welcome to the Growth, Grace, and Gratitude podcast. Today, we will talk a little bit about finding success as an entrepreneur who has ADHD, anxiety, and mental issues, which many of us actually do, with our very special guest, Dr. John Torrens, who is an award-winning professor of entrepreneurial practice and three-time Inc. 5000 entrepreneur. He is a healthcare and education entrepreneur with 25 years leading high-growth companies with experience in developing high-performing teams, raising capital. Dr. Torrens is a faculty member of the Syracuse University Whitman School of Management's Department of Entrepreneurship and Emerging Enterprises and president of Sprout Therapy Group. He is an executive education instructor in the areas of entrepreneurship, strategy, and corporate innovation. Dr. Torrens is a TED ex speaker, ADHD as an entrepreneur's superpower, and author of the book Lightning in a Bottle: How Entrepreneurs Can Harness Their ADHD to Win. He is an active member of Young Presidents Organization, and he is the podcast host of The Total Entrepreneur: Mind, Body, Spirit, where he talks about the performance advantages entrepreneurs can gain by prioritizing their mental, physical, and spiritual health. So, what a beautiful bio. Very excited to chat with you today. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure, Ari. Thanks for having me.
Yes, of course. And I think it's interesting how a lot of my podcast episodes are about like spiritual growth and finding
Mm.
your sense of spirituality. And I feel like a lot of people do have ADHD or symptoms in different periods of their lives. Sometimes it flares up and they notice it more. But I feel like overall, like in my experience connecting with different people, like the energy of ADHD kind of fuels a sense of depth within us. And in a way, if you're able to channel it correctly, it feels like a sense of divine creativity. So I don't know what's your personal experience with this in channeling for like a purposeful, productive task, but I find it, especially like when I perform, I grew up dancing in ballet. So I perform with New York City Ballet at Madison Square Garden, Miami City Ballet, and I always felt like whenever I had this like jolt of nervous energy, I did feel kind of like that heightened overactivity sometimes, and it kind of felt like channeled in a direct area, and then I felt more kind of connected to my own zen, my own flow state. So I think
Mm.
it's interesting how once you do channel it correctly, it's able to kind of lead you into a very specific productive role that kind of fuels abundance in a way.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting point and an interesting question. So I don't know if there is a connection between people who have, neurodiverse qualities like ADHD and spirituality, for example. Although I can tell you that I have ADHD and I'm very interested in spirituality, and just being connected to something higher than us, one source, that sort of thing. And I think when you mention flow states, it's really interesting because people with ADHD do get into those, and I think it's a really interesting thing just from a human perspective because that's what we're all trying to achieve, right? Is to get into a flow state, get to a place where we're operating in our best possible capacity for our best highest purpose. And I think that's universal.
It's so true. Even when I was writing my poem book, I felt a sense of direct focus. Really, it helps me to channel better. It's also with performance art. Anytime we're doing something and we have kind of like a focus to do something, it really inspires this kind of centering. And I think it's also interesting how it comes on in a way to like inspire a deeper version of ourselves to come into form. Because if we're on a spiritual path and we're having different mental breakdowns or emotional kind of healing experiences. I think ADHD in a way can be like that 0 point field level where it gives us that opportunity to kind of like dig deeper or
Hmm.
kind of create more.
It's what we found is that there is a connection between hyperactive and impulsive ADHD. So even though ADHD is absolutely, or it can be, a very debilitating condition for most people, right? You're more likely to have anxiety, other concomitant conditions. You're more likely to get divorced, get a poor performance review at work, all that type of thing. There are really debilitating consequences. But in the context of entrepreneurship, it can be an advantage for a variety of reasons. But it is important to recognize that there's a downside and an upside. So, for example, one of the symptoms of ADHD is what they call lack of premeditation, or not thinking things through too much, or overanalyzing. And that could be an advantage in an entrepreneurial context if you recognize an opportunity, jump on it quickly, and act before your competitors do, for example. On the other hand, if you're lacking premeditation and you don't think things through all the way, when it's not working for you, it could look like you're making rash decisions and judgments and doing things without really thinking through all the downside and the risk. So even though there's a lot of positive to it, there's also a lot of negative. So some of the work I do with my students at Syracuse University, for example, is just try to help them identify the positive traits that they have and work on mitigating the negative effects of those traits and amplifying the positive effects.
Podpitch is the first and only software that finds, writes, and sends pitches to podcast hosts from your actual email address. Podpitch will make sure you get podcast bookings, guaranteed. Link in the description of the podcast. ClickFunnels easily build any type of online business and sales funnel in record time, no matter what your product, service, or niche, without any tech design or experience whatsoever. Try the ClickFunnels 14-day free trial. Link in the description of the podcast.
And it's interesting, the whole idea of spirituality is something that I never really used to talk about, especially like 15 years ago in a school of management. But students nowadays, just like they're more willing or more agreeable to talk about their neurodivergence, their ADHD, mental health is not stigmatized as much as it used to be. They're also willing to talk about their feelings of spirituality. And it's not so much religion, it's really just feeling connected to the oneness, right? And students connect with that in a way that I haven't seen maybe 10 years ago. So it's really fun to watch and to work with them.
Totally, like from the 1970s, watching all those like old shows and old movies, it's like that timeline. It feels like it's kind of coming online now that people do want a kind of like a spiritual revival, revolution, feeling kind of part of their inner child or some version of themselves that they're craving to be awakened or activated. So yes, it is totally interesting. And you did a TED
Mhm.
Talk, which is so awesome. I listened to it and it's very inspiring. And like you personally having ADHD, did that like affect you? Were you very nervous? Like what is your kind of like, do you have any pre-rituals to kind of mitigate the anxiety before a performance or standing up in front of a big group of people?
No, I mean, so standing in front of a big group of people is energizing for me. I enjoy it. It just being a professor, it's something that I do every day anyhow, or like at a conference or something. But and I'm older now than I was when I got my diagnosis. So I think with age comes just a different perspective, a different stage in life. So you're doing different things, you're worried about different things, or you're not worried about the same things you used to be. But I found that the things that really help me are, one is some sort of spiritual practice or mindfulness practice, uh, a simple meditation or some breath work, right? Those are the things that, in an odd way or in an ironic way, help you pay attention to how you're paying attention.
If you're ready to shake off that daily stress, come join us for online beginner, adult, ballet, and yoga classes each week to connect with the flow of movement and the art of ballet into perfect synergy. Come as you are and learn to love your body a little bit more and gain strength and flexibility with each class. All are welcome. Sign up at Ballet Arts Movement telovital@gmail.com. First class free. Telovital supports focus, energy, immunity, sleep, recovery, and resilience. Start feeling better today on a cellular level with zeolite, super green juice, micronutrients, gut support, and more. Get over 50% off your first order for Telovital. Link in the description of the podcast.
So, you're breathing, you're getting into heart brain coherence, you're sending the messages out into the field that you want to resonate. And I think it's those things and just sort of understanding and capitalizing on those that have made a big difference for me.
That's really great. Yes, it's like we always in my I have a course where like we do inner child work, and we always ended with like a spiritual practice, and it's like
Yeah.
that really helps you ground and helps you kind of like connect to reality. And I feel like we all need that, even if it's like
Mhm.
anything that we find personally calms us down. It might not be the same thing universally, but it's like things that calm
Mhm.
us down and give us that meditative opportunity to center ourselves. I feel like that helps us also get
Yeah.
into like a zen state, flow
Yeah.
state.
Yeah, and there's a lot of science behind it too, right? So it's not just woo woo, or a lot of times when you talk about spirituality, people who maybe have a scientific bent on things sort of tune out. But the really cool thing is that science is now catching up to spirituality, right? We now have the instruments and ways to measure certain things that we couldn't before. So, for example, we know that the heart's energetic field radiates at least 3 meters from us. And we know it radiates further. We just don't have instruments sensitive enough to really measure it. But for example, like you've probably walked into a room and just felt the energy in the room, right? And that's not just a woo woo weird feeling. That is science. That is the heart's electromagnetic field radiating from the people in that room. And they are sending signals, whether they know it or not, they're sending signals about their internal state. So if there's a lot of excitement in the room, you pick that up when you walk in. If there's a lot of anxiety or anger in the room, you pick that up as well. So, likewise, it's also important to know when we walk into a room, what are we emanating from our heart center, right? Are we filling the field with messages and communication that's joyful and loving and excited and accepting and that sort of thing? Or are we just sending our anxiety and rushed energy into the room we're about to enter? And I think that's really important. And I love the fact that there are scientific instruments and peer reviewed studies that look at these things to basically prove things we've known for eons.
That's so true. Yes, and even people who are now connecting to different fields of like synchronicity, numerology, they
Mm.
try to tie it to like quantum physics or quantum mechanics, and there is a very interesting link from spirituality to science. A lot of people are learning the spiritual science of
Mm.
humanness, and it's a very interesting kind of process and journey that people are tuning into. And even the chakra system, people are starting to believe, like you mentioned, the heart center and how it
Mhm.
emanates energy, and that's like the center of the chakra system. So it's like people are
Yeah.
starting to see more and feel more and connect to different aspects of their etheric fields, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot to be gained from it too, right? It's not just fun for the sake of fun. I mean, you build and maintain better relationships. You tap into more creativity. There's a huge return on investment for focusing on these things.
100%. And it's like the whole point, the goal is like connection. It's like humans do crave that connection. And I think a lot of times when people are experiencing mental anxiety, ADHD symptoms, and all those things, it's because there is some kind of feeling of disconnection, either from
Yeah.
society, or from themselves, or from parts of themselves, parts of their creativity. Like when I have a class of students who come in after school to do dance class, sometimes it's like we have an option for professional dancers or just from all kids to give them the opportunity to come in and dance. And sometimes the kids will come in the beginning and have so much, mental anxiety. They're filled with students the whole day in school, so now it's after school, they're overwhelmed. And I try to have like classes that are fun and exciting, but also centered towards organization and structure and discipline. And you can tell after a while, the students are kind of like more in their flow state. They're more happy and excited. So I think it's really interesting how it's like a part of their intrinsic motivation is activated and they feel more at ease, less stressful. So there's
Mm-hmm.
something about that, connecting with others, with themselves, with movement, music. It's all spirituality, but it's all like through physicality as well.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I love that.
For entrepreneurs who do have ADHD and want to use it to the best of their abilities, what tips do you
Mhm.
have to improve their overall success?
It's really about setting the internal environment so that you can capitalize on the advantageous parts and minimize the parts that could be debilitating. So,
Unlock your best life with Soul app. Book a holistic wellness experience with a trained guide and start changing your life today with compassion practices, inner healing, food and diet, and so much more. Tap into a healthier and happier life with the number one purposeful living app in the US, the Soul app, link in the description of the podcast. Sanger Daniel's online seminar promoting a positive message of self-healing with bioenergy work together with live seminars and remote coaching. Use code BIO20 for a 20% discount for our audience. Link in the description of the podcast.
there's a couple things that are really important. And if you think of it just from the perspective of a consumption aspect and then an effort aspect, it's kind of helpful. So what are you consuming, like through your eyes, ears, mouth? For example, if you're drinking alcohol and eating sugars, red dyes, and caffeine a lot, you are going to be stacking the deck against yourself. So minimizing alcohol, really important because it has a cascading effect on your health in general. Not least important is your sleep. So make sure you're consuming things that are helpful. And we know that there's not too much that you can add to your diet that will help your ADHD symptoms, but there are many things that you can remove from your diet that will help. So central nervous system stimulants, sugar and caffeine, for example. Red dyes, anything that's not real food, if you can avoid that, avoid it. And not only will it help your ADHD symptoms, by the way, it'll help so many other things, which just kind of resonate with each other inside your body. So consumption is really important, just from an intake perspective, what you're eating and drinking, but also what you're taking in through your eyes and ears. So are you the type of person that, maybe during this interview, you've got four screens up, you've got a stock ticker, you've got WhatsApp, you've got Teams, you've got all this information and you're just consuming information all the time and you're not being very discriminating or discerning about what you're consuming from an information perspective, because that could send somebody with ADHD into an absolute tailspin. It's a lot of information. So just being conscious about what you're consuming, really important. The next thing is, what are you putting out? What's your output? So, just from a physical standpoint, do you have a movement practice every day? Because we know ADHD is about dopamine and movement provides that. So it could be just walking, which, by the way, is an amazing thing for your health span and your overall health anyway. People underestimate the value and the benefit of walking, but just taking a 20-minute walk is great. It gets the blood moving, gets some dopamine in your system, and you'll feel a lot better. Um, do you have other movement practices, right? Do you like to do yoga? Do you like to run? Do you like to cycle, swim, surf, ski? Whatever it is, do it. Make sure you're getting that kind of movement and energetic flow. Super important. From another perspective, your outputs professionally are important as well. So, what types of things are you doing on a daily basis? Are you doing the things that you're really good at and you and only you can do well in your organization? Or do you find yourself doing things that you resist and you don't like and you keep procrastinating and you put them off? And until you finally realize that, hey, there are other people who like to do this and they're actually good at it and you delegate it to them, that's when you start to feel liberated and you free yourself up to do other things and you don't have the guilt of not doing the thing that you thought you should do in the first place. So all those things are really important. So if you think about what's coming into your body through all your senses and what you're putting out of your body, those are really good places to start. So once you set that table, so to speak, then you can be much more in tune with how you're reacting to things. So, am I making a snap judgment here without really thinking through all the consequences? Or am I pursuing an opportunity really quickly, using my intuition, which I know is really good? As an example, do I have shiny object syndrome? And am I just chasing this opportunity because it's something that's shiny and bright and it caught my attention? Or is there a real strategic benefit to me and my organization for following it? So it's those types of things that will be much more possible to tap into if you're managing your body.
Yes, 100%. That's so true. And your book, "A Lightning in a Bottle: How Entrepreneurs Can Harness Their ADHD to Win," that's actually great because the idea of lightning in a bottle, it feels like kind of a lot of people who are on the spiritual journey talk about like Kundalini energy and that
Mm.
energy of electricity. Is that kind of like that, connected to that?
No, of course, yeah, I've heard about that. Although I didn't consciously make that connection when I titled the book, but it was about this intense energy that can be harnessed for good. I mean, imagine if you could, harness the energy of a lightning strike, right? That's the metaphor. So yes, it is. The idea is that it's exceptionally powerful if you can just channel it and harness it.
Right, exactly. Because like so often we do have impulses, and I feel like if we have an ability to be more like productive with our impulses, that helps so much because
Mhm.
sometimes we have so much energy, we just don't even know what to do with it. And it's like when we're given anything, any channel that's helping us to physically release it or physically express it, it helps us so much.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's very much like what you described. Um, yeah,
And what's next for you and for your work with entrepreneurship and ADHD?
yeah. So I did just I got certified as a HeartMath trainer at the HeartMath Institute. It's an amazing organization, very scientifically based, which I love about it. But it's all about the heart's energetic field and the types of techniques that you can use on a daily basis in the wild, in real life, not just like in a meditation studio or something, right? So I use that with my students now well, for a couple of things. One, to help them get into a more creative space, because one of the courses I teach is about coming up with a new innovative business idea and writing the plan and pitching it in a competition. So to help the students tap into their more creative, intuitive energy, we'll get into heart brain coherence through a couple of techniques that the HeartMath Institute has created and studied. So I've really been enjoying that, and I think I'm going to pursue that for the foreseeable future.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Dr. Torrens, for coming on the podcast. It was such a great conversation, very inspiring. And where can people connect with you and see all of your content and get your books?
Sure. So they can check out my website, johnmtorrens.com. They can find my book, Lightning in a Bottle: How Entrepreneurs Can Harness Their ADHD to Win, on Amazon. And they can follow me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. It's just at John M. Torrens.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure, Ari. Thanks for the conversation.